listening to LSU Daily with Matt Musso, your home for all things LSU sports.
Off and running here on another edition of LSU Daily. Welcome in. Glad to have you with me. Brian Kelly met with the media on Monday to kick off Oklahoma week. And, well, it was a pretty diverse press conference for BK on Monday. Met with the media for about 27 minutes and talked not only a preview of Oklahoma, but also a lot of NIL, a lot of roster construction, and even the future of some players as well that might be on track to return, and in some cases, Brian Kelly said, are expected to return. So we'll get into kind of all of that here today. One thought kind of on the portal and the roster, as well as these guys that could potentially return. Those kind of go hand in hand there. And then obviously thoughts on the Oklahoma Sooners. So subscribe if you have not already. Share if you have not already. All that greatly appreciated. Follow me on social media. Twitter X at Musso Matthew. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram at Matthew Musso 1. Again, all of that is greatly appreciated. We're heading into the regular season finale here. It's been a long year, but also one that has gone by fairly quickly. And it's been jam-packed with a lot of different angles and a lot of different talking points. So one more to go. But before we get to Oklahoma, I do kind of want to start with the ancillary stuff that Brian Kelly talked about. The NIL, the portal, the roster construction, returnees, things of that nature. And look, obviously we've talked a lot about the future of this program the last few weeks. And maybe you're like, God, another conversation about the roster and building this thing. But look, man, when you're staring down the barrel of a 8-4, 7-5 season, that's where the focus, mainly lies. So I imagine a lot of people actually still, that's mainly what everybody wants to talk about, right? And Brian Kelly gave some really encouraging news on Monday. He was asked about the transfer portal. And the question was framed in the vein, I believe it was Scott Rabelais actually from The Advocate. Question was phrased in the vein of, hey, you just lost a pretty high-profile recruit, but do you look at it in the sense of, okay, you had funds committed there, and that frees up more funds for you to go back into recruiting or even in the transfer portal? And this is how Brian Kelly answered that question.
We'll be very aggressive. I think everybody that's followed us knows that we weren't very aggressive in the transfer portal. We put together a defensive line using minimal resources. We've really put ourselves in a position, and I'll use this term loosely, to stay well under the cap so we could be quite aggressive this year, as well as bringing in 16 mid-years. We're going to have 16 mid-years. We think that the program, in terms of the culture and the standards, are such that we can do that now, where we can bring in 16 freshmen and maybe one of, if not the largest, transfer portal classes as well.
How's that for transparency? It's one thing for us to sit here and talk about it daily. It's another thing to hear it from the head coach and get him on the record saying, not only we're going to be very aggressive, which direct quote, we're going to be very aggressive, but also, again, something we talked about and knew, but to have him on the record saying, they weren't last year. And they tried to put it together using minimal resources, staying well under the cap so they could set up to be more aggressive this season. And, you could look at it and go, why the hell wait? Go be aggressive immediately. Well, there's a lot of reasons. You weren't quite where you needed to be from a fundraising standpoint. Now you feel like you are. And which is evidenced by the $6 million over 4 years offer you had out to Bryce Underwood. That's some good fundraising. Now all that comes back into the boat, added into what you had already continued to raise. So yeah, you should have plenty of money there. There are clear needs on this team that I will be honest with you, I don't think have really changed much from the last portal cycle. So, we can get into where they go and things of that nature, but I'd actually rather just save that for a later date and tell you, go back to last year. I think a lot of it's very similar. Where you added guys, you probably still need to add guys, and there might be a couple other positions added to that, like running back. You have 2 freshmen coming in, but other than that, you have Caden Durham. I think you need a veteran guy back there that can contribute. But kind of back to that original question, why wait? Like, why not be aggressive last year at this point, especially in the early portal window when you weren't, and it backed you into a corner to where Brian Kelly's going on the record at that point saying, yeah, our main focus is defensive line, right? We are after one position in the portal, and it's defensive line. Well, that was the follow-up asked. Why did this offseason, I should say, set up for you to be more aggressive? Why was this one targeted?
Yeah, all of them are strategic decisions that you make from year to year, and it just didn't present for us in the manner that we felt like we were going to reach last year on some things, and just didn't, I think at the time when we were looking at players that made sense for us, they duplicated a lot of things. We don't have that duplication in the program anymore. So that's why in certain areas we'll be very aggressive.
So that's the nice way of him saying in a couple of different areas we didn't like our board. Didn't really like what we were available or what was available for us to get. You also had the bidding wars with the 2 defensive tackles, and that prompted Brian Kelly to come out on the record and be like, some guys just want to come here to be paid, and we're not just going to pay you. Like, you have to fit, you have to do all of that. That factors in. I'll tell you another thing that factors in, and remains to be seen what happens here, but you have a chance. Like, if you're going to go all in on a year, it should be next year, because you're hopeful that Garrett Nussmeier will be back, and you'll have a second-year starting quarterback. You'll have a much more veteran presence at the most important position on the field that will hopefully take the jump we've seen so many quarterbacks at LSU take from year 1 starting to year 2. I don't have to go through the list. You know who they are, and the most recent 2 won Heisman trophies. I'm not telling you Garrett Nussmeier is going to go out there and win a Heisman Trophy in 2025 if he returns. I'm not telling you Garrett's totally going to return. You look up on big boards, he's like the 4th-ranked quarterback in the class. Still, Garrett's had a great year. I mean, statistically, he's had a great year. Have there been slip-ups? Sure. That's going to happen in your first year starting. But the talent still shows. And that's ultimately what guys are looking for in the draft. Now, you also will throw out there that the NFL is not a developmental league. You need to be ready to play. Do I think that Garrett Nussmeier is ready to play in the NFL right now today? No, I think one more year of college would help him there. But I also think if he's a top 100 player in this draft, he has to go. You're not going to pass on that. So we'll wait and let that process play out. But if you look and you have a second-year starter at quarterback, that's great to build around. That is absolutely fantastic to be able to build around. You've seen what LSU offenses can be in that second year. And when you look at what the needs you still need in the portal, but also what Brian Kelly said, 16 mid-years coming in out of the recruiting class, a lot of those guys are on defense. That already gets them into the system early and they'll go through spring, and it gives them a chance to contribute early and immediately make you better. So there's plenty of reasons when you look at this season as to why it makes sense to be so aggressive and to build for this offseason to be so aggressive when looking into year 4. Now, there's a lot of what-ifs in there. But I think what should also kind of give you maybe some solace is the aggression that's coming in the portal. Say Garrett Nussmeier leaves. Okay? Well, you're telling me you're going to be aggressive. There's going to be really good veteran quarterbacks in the portal because there are all the time. And you've hit really well on transfer quarterbacks at LSU. Go get one. Go be aggressive and get one. And that's kind of another reason to hold off on total needs right now in the portal because you just don't know yet. You don't know all of them yet. There will undoubtedly be departures from LSU that open up more space on the team to bring in transfers at key positions. That's just the nature of college football. We know that. But 10,000-foot view, it makes a lot of sense now that they've built towards this season as the potential to go ham in the portal and build yourself, hopefully, a championship contending team. But if nothing else, you put together a really nice season, can get in, and you build on the foundation. Now, I will punctuate all of that with saying, all this talk, and not for me, from that building, about being aggressive in the portal, about 16 mid-year enrollees and holding on to this class and hopefully adding Jakeem Stewart, although, but hopefully adding Jakeem Stewart, which is a guy I think you just have to get for optics. All of that, and I've said this before, just heightens the expectations. And it makes it really hard for anything close to what happened this year to be accepted going forward. I'm not telling you if Brian Kelly goes 7-5, 8-4 next year, he's fired. It's not what I'm saying. But this is kind of your last chance to really instill confidence. You might coach out the string because of the contract, but this is where you build. This is your last chance to build confidence going forward, I think, with the fan base and the administration at LSU. Because now excuses are kind of out the window. You can't blame the roster anymore. You can't say, these are the guys that we have, if you go out and you are aggressive and you bring in this great class. But when you ask why go about it for year 4, this is why. Continuing that, some guys who could be back. And let's start with Harold Perkins. Brian Kelly was asked Monday for an update on Harold Perkins and if he's made any decisions about his future with the program.
He's doing really well in his recovery. Talking to Owen Stanley, our athletic trainer, he's been in the building quite a bit. Now that he's past the early stages of the repair, now it's about hard work. I don't know that he's made that final decision. I know he's weighing the options, and clearly we would love to have him back, but we know that those decisions are not easy. We'll support him in whatever he decides and provide him all the resources necessary to make the best decision for him and his family.
Perkins has a ways to go on the decision. We'll come back to that. It's great to hear the recovery's going well. Just personally for a guy like Harold Perkins, who's such a freak athlete, and that's going to be a really hard injury kind of to come back from. Just for a guy who is so athletic, can run sideline to sideline, all those things, can cover. So he's also planting, and doing all those types of things with the many roles that he can fill. So to hear that he's doing great, the rehab's going great, is awesome just for his future in general, whether it's at LSU or in the NFL. So fired up to hear that. When it comes to the decision on draft or return, that's an interesting one. And that one's going to be very fluid. And, of course, there's scuttle that, he might want to come back. And you heard Brian Kelly say they'd welcome him back. And, of course, that you would. I know Perkins ended up in the crosshairs plenty this season. Harold Perkins can be a massive asset to this defense if he comes back. He just can. You're better with that type of athlete on the field, period. You just are. Talked about it after he got hurt, after he tore the ACL against UCLA. You're not better without him. You're better with him. And while you saw flashes of LSU's defense, really, really shine in the immediacy without Harold Perkins, you've seen that regress back to the mean. Like you did. What you have to do in order for that to work is find the right position for him, and it's not off-ball linebacker. I think we can all agree with that now. You've tried it twice with 2 different coaches. It doesn't work. Blake Baker's defense creates havoc. That guy is the best option you have to create havoc. So if Harold Perkins comes back, 1, yes, that makes you better, and 2, especially if you put him in a position to create havoc. Now, I keep saying it's fluid because y'all 2 weeks ago, Chris Trapasso not 2 weeks, last week, Chris Trapasso at CBS Sports had a mock draft where Harold Perkins was still going in the first round because of just the talent that he is. And teams are going to want that type of player on their defense, and you should too if he's able to come back. But again, just as recently as a week ago, you have draft analysts, well-respected draft analysts, projecting him still in the first round. There's a long way to go till April. We'll see how that goes. How can the recovery go? Can Harold test at something like LSU's Pro Day? I think the Combine's probably out of reach there, but maybe not. Pro Day certainly is within reach. How does all that go? We'll look. But if you can get Harold Perkins back, that's huge for the linebacking room, which you've seen Devon Keys really emerge in the linebacking room this year, late in the season, after the Perkins injury. You could have West and Whit Weeks back. Now, West can't play Saturday or he'll lose his red shirt. He could play in the bowl game because, remember, bowl games don't count towards eligibility anymore. But because he's played in 4 games this season and they want to redshirt him, he would have to, in case of just some major emergency, not play on Saturday. LSU just added the third Weeks brother on Monday. Zach Weeks, 4-star linebacker out of Georgia. He's reclassifying to 2025, so he will sign and be on campus for LSU for next season. How much can he contribute? I don't know. We'll see. It also just gives him a chance to play with his brothers, which is really cool, but you're building in that linebacker room. Greg Penn is out of eligibility. He will be gone, but that's still a really nice foundation that you have coming back. You've seen some of Xavier Atkins as well at the linebacker spot this year. So that could be great, and if you get Perkins, it's even better. The other one is C.J. Daniels, and this came out of left field for a lot of people. Brian Kelly was asked about the importance of C.J. Daniels to this offense this season. That's a conversation we've all had plenty, but it was what Kelly added at the end that grabbed everyone's attention.
First of all, he's a great leader, and he's been a glue guy for us in terms of consistency every single day, playing through a more significant injury than maybe people realize. He's had a pre-existing condition, heel injury, that is almost a dislocation that I don't know how he does it. He practices and we're careful with his practice during the week to get him to Saturdays. And then on Saturdays, he's just so consistent. He's down the field blocking. He's one of our best, if not our best blocker. He's precise in his route running. He's got strong hands at the point of attack. And we're just excited about having him with us. And all indications are that he's going to be back next year.
So the end of that, all indications that he's going to be back here next year. We'll come back to that as well. But how about Brian Kelly also sitting there talking about his injuries? Not just the knee, which we all knew about, but what Brian Kelly called like a dislocated heel, which sounds incredibly painful, and he's out there playing through it. Man, that's grit. That's toughness. Yeah, you do something like that, you are a great leader. That's leading by example. I don't care if C.J. Daniels ever says a damn thing in the locker room. They know what he's going through, and to see him out there playing hard, and not just in the pass game, but as Brian Kelly mentioned, blocking downfield. Glue guy is a fantastic term. We've always kind of talked about him, as somebody who's just Nuss trusts so much. He's such a security blanket type player for Garrett Nussmeier, where he knows if he needs to throw the ball to somebody, C.J. Daniels is going to catch it, and he can throw it to C.J. Daniels. Much like Mason Taylor, right? And to have a guy like that, who has played his ass off through knee and a heel and everything else, all the lows of this season from a team standpoint, be able to return next year with hopefully a second-year starting quarterback who trusts him so much, that would be huge. Getting C.J. Daniels back in general for 2025 is huge. And again, all signs point to that right now. Things can change, but getting him back in general is huge. If you plug him back in with a lot of the same pieces on offense, namely your quarterback, that's going to be even better. And of course, everyone's keeping an eye on Mason Taylor. What does he want to do? And everybody kind of keeping an eye on Emery Jones as well. I can tell you, I've had firsthand conversations with a scout that has already said that other scouts are telling Emery Jones going back to LSU might be the best play, and kick inside because we want to play you at guard at the next level. So that could be a huge veteran piece back. Again, decisions have to be made by him and his family and all of that. And then Mason Taylor, for me, is kind of in the same vein as Nussmeier. I think Mason Taylor has a chance to be an early day 2 pick still. So That puts you well within the top 100. If you're in the top 100, it's hard to pass that up. But we'll see. You have a lot of interesting decisions to be made, and you could have a lot of awesome pieces returning if you're LSU. Okay, let's talk briefly here about Oklahoma. And we'll have plenty of time for our final preview and prediction to go through everything with the Sooners. Their defense is really the strength of the team, as you would expect under a Brent Venables coached team. But I really want to start with the offense, and specifically Jackson Arnold. So, look, man, if you don't know the story, Arnold, 5-star, was a freshman last season, played in the bowl game, wowed. Dylan Gabriel kind of shoved out the door so they could play Arnold. He comes in. It's a rough start, really, for him. He's benched in the middle of the Tennessee game. Didn't play the next 2 weeks against Auburn or Texas, but returned to the lineup as a starting quarterback against South Carolina. Had a nice performance, but the offense didn't hum. Oklahoma makes a change at offensive coordinator, and since then, the whole philosophy of the team has changed. You have really seen more ball control, more rush-oriented, and that has stemmed a lot from Jackson Arnold. And it really started in that Ole Miss game, where you saw Jackson Arnold tote the ball 24 times against Ole Miss, and Oklahoma had the Rebs on the ropes for a while in that game until Ole Miss was able to finally just kind of separate in the second half. But again, you're looking at 24 carries. Now, it only resulted in 39 yards because he was sacked 9 times in that football game. 9 times in that football game. Because sack yards come out of rush yards instead of pass yards, and college football's stupid for that reason. But you fast forward to the game against Maine, and you really saw the run game take off again. Oklahoma had a running back, Barnes, go over 203 yards in that football game against Maine. And I get it. It's Maine, right? Like, we're not going to sit here and just crown them for blowing the doors off of Maine. There's really nothing to be, ecstatic about on that. But you saw the run game really succeed. And you look at Jackson Arnold in that game, Arnold had nine carries for 45 yards. He obviously didn't play the whole game. They won 59-14. But you saw the success again on the ground. The very next week at Missouri, he goes 17 for 45 in that ball game. Now, let's go ahead, check your sack numbers, obviously there. And he was sacked 3 times, so it could have been more. But the one that stands out is obviously last week against Alabama, where he carries the ball 25 times for 131 yards, and he was sacked only once. When you look at rushing quarterbacks and what the problems they've given LSU, here comes Jackson Arnold and another one in this newfound ball control, run-heavy offense. What I do like is you saw it similar. Like Oklahoma's not going to have as many triple option principles in their offense as Vanderbilt, but you just faced this style of offense with who wants to just control the clock, run the ball, and do it with the quarterback as well. And you had some success. Can you build off of it? I don't know. I mean, history says throughout the season, no, that you can't. Like that's what the history of this season says. So that's a big question going forward into this game. The other thing to watch, not just Arnold's ability, but how it's changed Oklahoma's offense. So they only put up 14 against Ole Miss. That's the first game of the new play caller, all that, and you're going up against arguably the best defense in the SEC. Since then, you put up 59 against Maine. Again, it's Maine. 23 against Missouri, and then 24 against Alabama. You have definitely seen a jump in the points as well with this newfound offense. Makes sense. You're having more success moving the ball, and it's easier to finish drives in a red zone when you have the ability to run the football. Conversation we've had plenty this year pertaining to LSU. You have to stop him from running the ball. And I mean him. I mean Jackson Arnold. Because I'll say it again. I'm not worried about the running backs. I'm just not. Since Rocket Sanders LSU has given up one 100-yard game to a running back. One. That's it. They'll shut down what they need to shut down from the backs. It's all about the quarterback for me. You did well against Pavia. You're facing an offense that wants to do the same exact thing. Run the ball, including the quarterback, and control the clock. Can you build on that performance? That's going to be key. Getting off the field on third down, something you did great against Vanderbilt. You have to do that again against Oklahoma. You kept Vanderbilt in some pretty third and long distances. Need to keep Oklahoma behind the chains as well. Because that's a really, really good defense that's going to give LSU's offense some potential issues. I think we want to. It's weird talking about this game because it feels like you're talking about it early in the season because it's always, okay, can you build now? Can you build? Can you build? Well, you had a pretty good offensive performance. Garrett Nussmeier played his best game. Can you go forward with it? Can you build? And I think that's really intriguing too because you talk about that second year starter. And another similarity between all of them at LSU is go back and look at the end. The end of their first year starting, they really started to get it. It started to click, and it went forward. It happened with Mettenberger, kind of really starting with that Alabama game. It happened with Joe Burrow, really the week after that, but everyone's going to point really to that A&M and Central Florida Bowl game. And it happened with Jaden Daniels as well. And I want to see if it's happening with Nuss because he just played his most complete game, his best game of the year. Can you build on that and make that a trend here as you finish out the regular season and go into your bowl game? So you'll have to face a really good defense to do it against in Oklahoma. But for me, yeah, it starts on LSU's defensive end and shutting down another ball control heavy offense. See if they can do it. That game kicks off 6 p.m. Saturday night in Death Valley, and it will put a wrap on LSU's 2024 regular season. We will continue to count you down. Be sure to subscribe, share, follow me on social media. All of that greatly appreciated. Thank you for being here again today, and be here next time for more on LSU Daily.